The dust on Vareth 7 never settled properly. It hung in the air like a red mist, getting into everything. Teeman wiped his visor for the third time that hour and checked his scanner again. The readings were strange, this far from the mining colony, but that was why he was out here. Someone had to check if the old equipment was leaking radiation. He walked carefully between the rusted machines that the previous mining company had abandoned. They rose from the rocky ground like metal skeletons, their joints frozen with age and neglect. The wind made them creak and groan. Teeman had been a medic for 8 years, assigned to remote colonies where nobody else wanted to go. He had seen stranger places than this. The sound hit him first. A high-pitched whining, almost like crying. Teeman stopped and turned his head, trying to locate the source. There it was again, coming from behind a collapsed drilling rig. He approached slowly, one hand on the emergency beacon at his belt. The colony had warned him about the local wildlife. Most of it wanted to eat you or poison you. What he found was neither eating nor poisoning anything. It was trapped. The creature was small, maybe the size of a large dog. Its fur was a deep purple that caught the light strangely, almost like oil on water. 6 legs, 4 eyes, a tail that thrashed weakly against the metal that pinned it. One of its front paws was caught in the old machinery, crushed between 2 rusted gears. Blood that looked too blue to be right pooled underneath. Teeman knew what this was. The colony briefings had showed him pictures, though never this close. A Velthruk, the species that owned this entire sector of space before humans started mining here. The species that attacked survey ships and destroyed outposts. The species that had killed 17 miners last year when they got too close to a breeding ground. This was a cub. It saw him and made a horrible sound. Somewhere between a hiss and a scream. Its eyes went wide with terror. The good paws scrambled against the ground, trying to pull away, but the trapped limb kept it fixed in place. Fresh blood leaked from the wound. Teeman should have called the colony. He should have backed away and let security handle it. That was protocol? That was smart. But he was a medic, and the thing in front of him was a child in pain. And 8 years of training made his hands move before his brain could stop them. He knelt slowly, keeping his movements careful and obvious. The cub thrashed harder, making sounds that hurt to hear. Teeman started talking, keeping his voice low and calm. It did not matter that the creature could not understand his words. Tone mattered. Tone always mattered. Easy now. I know it hurts. I know you are scared. Let me help. He set down his equipment bag and pulled out the medical kit. The cub watched him with all 4 eyes, its breath coming in rapid pants. When Teeman reached toward the trapped paw, it tried to bite him. The teeth snapped shut inches from his glove. I know, Teeman said softly. I would bite me too. He examined the machinery first. The gears were old, the metal brittle. He could probably force them apart with the right leverage. But he needed to stabilize the wound first, or the cub would bleed out as soon as he freed it. Teeman pulled out a universal coagulant spray, designed to work on most carbon-based life forms. The briefings had said Velthruk biology was similar enough to Earth mammals. Similar enough for this, at least. He hoped. The cub struggled violently when the cold spray hit its wound. Teeman held firm, one hand on the creature's shoulder, keeping it from tearing the injury worse. The coagulant foamed and hardened, sealing the worst of the bleeding. The cub's sounds changed from screams to whimpers. Good, that is good. Almost done. He found a metal pipe and wedged it between the gears. The leverage was tricky, his angle awkward. Teeman put his weight on the pipe and pushed. The old metal resisted, then gave way with a screech that echoed across the waist. The gears separated. The cub pulled its paw free instantly and scrambled backward, dragging the injured limb. It huddled against a rock pile, watching him with those 4 strange eyes. The paw hung at a wrong angle. Definitely broken, along with the lacerations. Teeman did not approach. Instead, he took out a flexi-cast and set it on the ground between them. He added a packet of pain medication, preloaded in a dermal patch. Then he backed away 10 steps and sat down on the dusty ground. You need to let me fix that, he said. Or you will lose the paw. Your choice. The cub stared at him. Its breath was still fast, but the panic seemed to be fading. It looked at the medical supplies, then back at T-Man. He waited. Minutes passed. The wind picked up, throwing more red dust into the air. T-Man's scanner beeped with a proximity warning, but he ignored it. His focus was on the small injured creature, trying to decide if he was a threat. Finally, slowly, the cub crawled forward. It moved on 5 legs, keeping the injured paw raised. It stopped at the medical supplies and sniffed them carefully. Then it looked at T-Man again. He stayed very still. The cub picked up the pain patch in its mouth and pressed it against its own shoulder, awkward but determined. The medication worked fast. T-Man could see the tension leave the small body as the pain faded. The cub sat down heavily. That is better, yes? Now the hard part. T-Man moved forward slowly, giving the cub time to react. It did not run. When he reached for the injured paw, it flinched but held still. He worked quickly, cleaning the wound properly, applying antibiotic gel, setting the bone. The cub made small sounds of discomfort but did not fight him. The flexi-cast molded perfectly around the limb, providing support while allowing some movement. T-Man wrapped it with a bandage for extra protection. His hands were steady, doing what they had done thousands of times before. The patient did not matter. The species did not matter. The wound mattered. When he finished, he sat back. The cub examined its bandaged paw, turning it carefully. It looked up at T-Man, and something in those alien eyes seemed different. Less afraid. Maybe confused. His proximity sensor beeped again, louder this time. T-Man looked up and felt his stomach drop. They stood at the edge of the waist area, maybe 20 meters away. 5 adult Velthruck, each one easily twice his size. Their fur was darker than the cub's, marked with scars that spoke of violence. They carried weapons, crude but effective-looking spears made of bone and metal. They were not attacking. They were watching. The largest one, a massive creature with a torn ear and patterns of scars across its chest, took a step forward. The cub made a chirping sound and limped toward the adults. They did not move to help it. They just watched T-Man. He stood slowly, keeping his hands visible and empty. His heart hammered in his chest, but he kept his breathing steady. Running would do nothing. If they wanted to kill him, they would. The big Velthruck looked at the cub, then at T-Man. Its eyes moved to the bandaged paw, then back to T-Man's face. For a long moment, nothing happened. The wind blew. The old machines creaked. Then the Velthruck dipped its head, just slightly. A nod, maybe. Or acknowledgement. It turned away, and the others followed. The cub looked back once before disappearing with them into the rocky terrain. T-Man stood alone in the waste, his medical kit open at his feet, and wondered what he had just done. Haijin looked at T-Man like he had grown a second head. Her office was small and cluttered with administrative datapads, and right now it felt even smaller with Doyon standing there too, arms crossed, face hard. You did what? Haijin asked again. I treated an injured Velthruck cub, T-Man repeated. He had told the story twice already. It was trapped in old equipment. I freed it and bandaged its paw. Doyon made a sound that was not quite a laugh. You are lucky you still have a head? Do you know what those things do to people? T-Man knew. Everyone at the colony knew. The Velthruck had a reputation, and none of it was good. But what he had seen in the waste was not a monster. It was a scared child with a broken paw. They did not attack me, T-Man said. The adults came and they just watched, then they left. Haijin rubbed her temples. She had been colony administrator for 3 years, and those years had aged her. This is a diplomatic incident waiting to happen. Corporate will want reports. Multiple reports. I filed my medical report, T-Man said. Your medical report says you provided aid to a hostile alien species without authorization. Haijin pulled up something on her datapad. Do you understand the paperwork that creates? T-Man understood. He also understood that if he had left the cub to die, he would not be able to look at himself in a mirror. But he did not say that. Haijin was a good administrator, but she thought in terms of procedures and protocols. Some things did not fit on forms. 3 days passed. The colony returned to its normal routine. Miners went out in their teams, extracting rare minerals from deep shafts. Engineers maintained equipment. Teeman treated the usual injuries, a sprained ankle, a minor burn, someone who thought they could eat the local fungus and learned otherwise. He was in the medical bay, organizing supplies. When the alarm started, the perimeter alert was different from the emergency siren. It was a pulsing tone that meant something was at the boundary fence, something the sensors tagged as potentially hostile. Teeman heard running in the corridors outside, heard Doyen's voice over the intercom ordering security to stations. He left the medical bay and headed for the command center. Nobody stopped him. When he arrived, the main display showed the feed from the perimeter cameras. Velthric, at least 30 of them, standing just beyond the fence line. They were not attacking, not trying to breach. They were just standing there, weapons visible but lowered. "Why are they not doing anything?" one of the security officers asked. Doyen studied the display, his hand near the alarm that would seal the colony completely. "I do not like this. It feels like a setup." Haijin was already there, looking pale. "Can we contact them? Do we have translation software?" "We have basic xenolinguistics programs," someone said. "But Velthric do not communicate with other species." "There is no database." Teeman pushed closer to the display, scanning the gathered aliens. There, in the front. The cub, walking on all 6 legs now? The bandage was gone, but the paw looked healed enough to bear weight. "They want something," Teeman said. "Obviously," Doyen replied. "The question is what?" The answer came quickly. The large Velthric with the torn ear stepped forward from the group. The same one who had watched Teeman in the waste. It walked toward the fence slowly, and as it got closer, Teeman could see it was limping badly. One side of its body was matted with dark blood. "Is that the same one?" Haijin asked. "Yes," Teeman said. He was already moving toward the door. Doyen caught his arm. "Where are you going?" "They want medical help. You do not know that." "Look at it," Teeman said, pointing at the display. The big Velthric had reached the fence. It stood there, swaying slightly. As they watched, it dropped its spear on the ground. Then it lifted one arm and pointed at its wounded side. The gesture was clear even across species lines. "It is asking for help," Teeman said. Haijin stepped between him and the door. "Absolutely not. We lock down and call for corporate security forces." "This is beyond our authority. That will take days. It might not have days." "That is not our problem." Teeman looked at her, then at Doyen, then back at the screen. The Velthric was still standing there, waiting. Behind it, the others had not moved. They were just watching like the adults in the waste had watched. "I am going out there," Teeman said. "I will have you restrained," Haijin warned. "Then restrain me." "But that creature came here asking for help because I helped its child. If we turn it away, what message does that send?" Doyen was quiet for a moment, then he sighed. "He has a point. We have been trying to establish contact with the Velthric for years." "This might be an opportunity, or a trap," Haijin said. "Maybe, but if it is not and we do nothing," Doyen shrugged. "I will go with him, full security escort." In the end, they compromised. Teeman would go to the fence with medical supplies. Doyen and 4 security officers would go with him, armed but not aggressive. The fence would stay up. If anything went wrong, they would retreat immediately. The walk to the perimeter felt longer than it was. Teeman carried his field kit and a larger medical case. His suit felt too thin, even though it was rated for the environment. When they reached the fence, the big Velthric was still there, 10 meters away on the other side. Up close, the wound looked worse. A deep gash ran along the creature's side, from shoulder to hip. It was infected, the edges swollen and leaking fluid that was not quite pus, but close enough. The Velthrac's breathing was labored. "I need the fence down," Teeman said. "I cannot treat it from here." "Not happening," Doyen replied. Teeman looked at the Velthric. It looked back, 4 eyes meeting too. He made a gesture toward the fence, then pointed at the wound. The Velthric seemed to understand. It backed away several steps and sat down heavily on the ground. "Lower the fence," Teeman said. "Just this section." 10 meters. Doyen thought about it, then spoke into his command. Lower fence section 7-10 meter span. Keep all weapons locked on target. The fence hummed and retracted into the ground. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Teeman stepped forward across the boundary onto alien territory. The security team followed close behind, weapons ready. The Velthric did not move. It sat there, breathing hard, and watched Teeman approach. When Teeman knelt beside it, he could smell the infection. Bad? Very bad. He opened his medical case and started pulling out supplies. The Velthric flinched when he touched the wound, but it held still. "This will hurt," Teeman said, knowing it did not understand. "I am sorry." He cleaned the wound first, flushing out the infection with antibacterial solution. The Velthric made a low growling sound but did not pull away. Teeman worked quickly, his hands sure despite the alien physiology. The wound needed to be debrided, the dead tissue removed. He used a laser scalpel for precision, cutting away the infected flesh. 20 minutes passed. 30. The sun was setting, turning the red dust purple. Teeman stitched the wound closed with dissolvable thread, applied antibiotic gel, and covered everything with a large flex bandage. He added a pain patch to the Velthrac's shoulder and packed away his equipment. The big alien stood up slowly, testing its weight. The limp was still there, but less pronounced. It looked down at Teeman, and this time there was no question about the gesture. It dipped its head in a clear bow, then it turned and walked back to the others. The cub ran forward to meet it, chirping excitedly. The group began to leave, heading back into the rocky terrain. Teeman watched them go, his hands still shaking slightly from adrenaline. Doyan came up beside him. "That was either very brave or very stupid," Doyan said. "Maybe both," Teeman replied. They walked back to the colony together. Behind them, the fence rose again, humming back to life. In his office, Teeman would file another report. Haijin would worry about the politics. Corporate would demand explanations, but right now, in this moment, Teeman felt something else. Hope, maybe, or possibility. The sense that something had shifted, that a door had opened that might never close again. He had no idea how right he was. The first ones arrived 4 days later. Just 3 Velthric approaching the fence at dawn. One had a gash across its back. Another had what looked like a broken arm. The third supported them both. TMIN treated them in the morning before his shift started. By afternoon, 5 more had come. By evening, 10. "This is getting out of hand," Haijin said, watching from the command center as another group approached the perimeter. "We are not a hospital." "We have a hospital bay," Teeman pointed out. He was exhausted, running on caffeine and stubborn determination. His uniform was stained with various colors of alien blood. A hospital bay designed for 50 humans, not an endless stream of Velthric. Haijin pulled up supply reports on her datapad. "We have used more medical supplies in the past week than in the previous 6 months. Corporate is already sending questions." Teeman had no good answer for that. He was a medic, not an administrator. His job was to fix people, not manage budgets. But even he could see the problem growing. It was Solman who suggested the solution. She was young, barely 25, assigned to the colony as a xenobiologist. Most days she studied soil samples and cataloged local microorganisms. Exciting work. She had told Teeman sarcastically for someone who wanted to study alien life. Now she had more alien life than she knew what to do with. "I can help," she said, appearing at the medical bay during one of Teeman's rare breaks. "I have been studying Velthric biology from the patients you treat. I can assist with basic procedures." Teeman looked at her tired eyes, her eager expression. "This is not what you signed up for." "Neither is what you are doing," Soman replied. "But here we are." She was right. Here they were. Together they established a system. Teeman handled the serious cases, the injuries that required surgical intervention or complex treatment. Soman managed the minor wounds, the infections, the broken bones that needed simple casting. They worked 16-hour days, sometimes 20 when the flow of patients did not stop, because it did not stop. It grew. Word had spread through the Velthric territories. Teeman did not know how. They had no communication technology that humans could detect, no radio signals or data transmissions. Yet somehow, Every Velthrak in the region seemed to know about the human healer who asked no questions and wanted nothing in return. They came in groups, in families, in whole tribes. They brought wounds from fights, from accidents, from infections that had festered for months. They brought their cubs with birth defects. They brought their elders with chronic pain. They brought everything. Jiwan, the supply officer, started rationing medical equipment. "We cannot sustain this," she told Timan bluntly. "Every bandage, every medication, every tool comes from Earth. The next supply ship is not due for 3 months. What do you suggest?" Timan asked. "Stop treating them, or start charging them." "Charging them what? They do not have money. Then trade goods. They must have something of value." Timan thought about that conversation while he cleaned a wound on a young Velthrak's leg. The injury was deep, caused by something with claws. The Velthrak had walked for 2 days to reach the colony, its leg wrapped in dirty cloth. Could he tell this one to leave? To suffer because supply chains and economics said there was not enough to go around. He had become a medic to help people, not to make judgments about who deserved care. But Jiwan was right. They could not help everyone. Not like this. The crisis came 3 weeks after it all started. Timan was in the medical bay, stitching a cut on a Velthrak's arm, when Doyun appeared in the doorway. His expression was serious. "We have a situation at the perimeter. Another patient?" Timan asked, focused on his work. "Patients, but plural, about 40 of them." Timan's hand stilled. He tied off the stitch and applied a bandage, then followed Doyun to the command center. The display showed the perimeter fence, and beyond it, a mass of Velthrak. They spread out in groups, sitting or lying on the ground. Many were injured. Some looked like they could barely move. "Who are they?" Haijin asked. Someone was already at a terminal bringing up translation software they had been developing. It was basic, built from observed Velthrak vocalizations and gestures, but it was something. "Let me check the visual patterns, those markings, the way they are grouped. I think that is a clan structure, a whole tribe, maybe." At the front of the group, a massive Velthrak stood watching the colony. It was bigger than any Timan had seen before, its fur marked with intricate patterns that spoke of age and status. Scars covered its body like a history written in violence. "That is a chieftain," Soman said. "I have read about them in the xenological reports. They lead the large tribes." The chieftain raised one arm and made a gesture. Even without translation, the meaning was clear. It was pointing at its people, at their wounds. It was asking for help. "How many wounded?" Timan asked. Soman did a quick count. "At least 30, some seriously injured. If we treat them, we will burn through our remaining emergency supplies," Jawan said over the com. "We will have nothing left for the colonists." Haijin turned to Timan. "This is your call. You started this. You decide?" Timan looked at the screen. He saw suffering, plain and simple. Species did not matter. Politics did not matter. Those were people in pain, and he had the skill to help them. "We treat them," he said. Timan, Jiwan started. "We treat them," he repeated more firmly. "Bring everything we have. Set up triage outside the medical bay. Soman, you are with me. Doyan, we need security to manage the flow so we do not get overwhelmed." For a moment, nobody moved. Then Haijin nodded. "You heard him. Make it happen." The next 12 hours were chaos. Timan moved from patient to patient, his hands working automatically while his brain cataloged injuries and prioritized treatment. Broken bones, infected wounds, internal bleeding, burns that looked chemical. One Velthrak had taken a spear through the shoulder, and the weapon had broken off, leaving the tip embedded. Soman worked beside him, her xenobiology training proving invaluable. She understood Velthrak physiology in ways Timan did not, could predict how their bodies would respond to treatment. Together they were faster, more efficient. Colonists came to help without being asked. Minho, an engineer, set up additional lighting outside the medical bay. Others brought water and supplies, organized the waiting wounded, kept the chaos from becoming disaster. The chieftain watched everything. It did not move from its position near the fence, just stood there observing as Timan treated its people. When Timan finished with one patient, The chieftain would gesture, and another would come forward. Night fell, the work continued under artificial lights. Timon's hands cramped, his back ached, his eyes burned with fatigue. But he did not stop. It was past midnight when he finished the last patient, a young Velthrek with a badly set broken leg that needed to be rebroken and reset properly. Timon administered anesthesia, worked as gently as he could, and applied a proper cast. When he finally stood up, his knees protested. He walked to where the chieftain still waited, Soman translating as best she could through gestures and basic vocalizations. The chieftain looked at him for a long moment. Then it did something unexpected. It reached up and pulled a tooth from its own mouth, one of the long canines. Blood dripped from the gap. The chieftain held the tooth out to Timon. "What does that mean?" Timon asked. Soman was silent, thinking. "I'm not sure, but I think it is a trade, a tooth for services rendered, or maybe—" She paused. "Maybe it is more than that. In some Earth cultures, giving a piece of yourself means debt, means connection. Maybe this is similar." Timon took the tooth. It was heavy, warm from the chieftain's body. The Velthrek bowed its head, then turned and led its tribe away into the darkness. Timon stood at the perimeter, holding an alien tooth, wondering what he had gotten himself into. Behind him, the medical bay was a disaster of used supplies and blood-stained equipment. His emergency reserves were gone. But every one of those 40 Velthrek was walking away alive. "We are in trouble," Hyjin said quietly, coming to stand beside him. "I know," Timon replied. "Corporate is going to shut this down. They are already sending representatives. I know that too." "Was it worth it?" Timon looked at the tooth in his hand, then at the disappearing shapes of the Velthrek tribe. "Yes," he said. "It was—" The chieftain's name was Thorol. Timon learned this 2 days after treating the tribe. When Thorol returned alone and stood at the fence making vocalizations that Soman worked frantically to translate. "He is trying to communicate," Soman said, her fingers flying across her datapad. "The translation software is catching maybe 1 word in 5, but I think he wants to talk." They met outside the fence again. This time, Thorol brought no wounded. Instead, he carried bundles wrapped in leather. When Timon approached, Thorol set them on the ground and stepped back. Timon unwrapped the first bundle carefully. Inside were plants, roots, and leaves he did not recognize. The second bundle contained stones that glowed faintly in the dim light. The third held what looked like dried meat. "Offerings," Soman said. "Trade goods, maybe?" Thorol made a rumbling sound and gestured at the bundles, then at Timon, then at himself. The meaning was fuzzy, but the intent seemed clear. These were gifts, or payment, or something similar. Over the next week, more Velthrek brought offerings. Not all of them were wounded. Some just came to leave bundles at the fence: food, minerals, crafted items made from bone and stone. A few colonists started examining the goods, cataloging them. "These minerals are valuable," Minho said, holding up one of the glowing stones. "Rare earth elements. Corporate would pay well for these." Hyjin saw an opportunity. "If we can establish trade relations, this colony becomes more than just a mining outpost. This becomes a diplomatic hub." But Timon was more interested in understanding the Velthrek themselves. Why did they bring these gifts? What did it mean to them? Soman shared his curiosity, and together they worked to improve their translation capabilities. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A young Velthrek that Timon had treated for an infected wound kept returning to the fence. Not for medical care, but just to sit and watch the colonists. Soman started sitting with it, showing it images on her datapad, pointing at objects and speaking their human names. The Velthrek responded with its own vocalizations. "Language exchange?" Soman said excitedly. "It is learning from me, and I am learning from it." They named the Velthrek Tavi, as close as human mouths could come to its actual name. Tavi became a bridge between species. Through Tavi, Soman learned basic Velthrek concepts. Through Soman, Tavi learned human ones. The real understanding came during a medical emergency. A Velthrek arrived at the fence with a compound fracture, the bone jutting through its skin. Tiemann was preparing to treat it when Tavi arrived and started vocalizing rapidly at Soman. "What is it saying?" Tiemann asked. Soman listened, her brow furrowed. "It is talking about showing? No, revealing. Something about revelation and trust." She looked up suddenly. "Tiemann, I think I understand. In Velthric culture, hiding injuries is shameful. Showing wounds means trust. That explains so much. The chieftain pulling its own tooth. The constant stream of wounded. They were not just seeking medical care. They were offering trust, showing vulnerability, and asking Tiemann to witness it. They see healing as sacred," Soman continued, working through Tavi's explanations. "Not just fixing bodies, but acknowledging suffering. When you treated that cub, you saw its pain and helped without demanding anything. In their culture, that is the highest honor." Tiemann sat with that information, understanding clicking into place. The gifts were not payment. They were reciprocation. He had seen their weakness. They were showing him respect by offering him pieces of their lives. More communication came faster after that. Tavi brought other young Velthric who wanted to learn human language. Soman established a basic school, teaching and learning in equal measure. Within a month, simple conversations were possible, and with conversation came stories. Thorol told them about the war. The Velthric territories were under assault by a species called the Korthan Collective. Aggressive, expansionist, they had been pushing into Velthric space for years. The fighting was brutal, and the Velthric had no medical infrastructure beyond basic field care. "They have been dying from treatable wounds," Soman translated, her voice quiet. "Infections, blood loss, injuries that could be survived with proper care." When Thorol heard about the human who healed without asking questions, he brought his entire tribe. Tiemann felt something cold settle in his stomach. "How many tribes are at war?" The answer made him close his eyes. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Thousands of Velthric wounded, suffering, dying from injuries that a competent medic could treat. "We cannot help them all," Hyjin said when Tiemann brought her this information. "It is not possible." "I know," Tiemann said. "But we can help some." Doyan had his own revelation. He had been training with some of the Velthric warriors, learning their combat techniques. "Their fighting is not about killing," he told Tiemann one evening. "It is about proving strength. Most of their battles are ritualistic. But the Korthan do not fight that way. They fight to exterminate. Why?" Tiemann asked. "Because they think weakness deserves death. The Velthric show their wounds, treat it as honorable. The Korthan see that as pathetic." Doyan shook his head. Two completely different philosophies meeting in violence. The political situation became more complicated when corporate representatives arrived. Two executives from Earth, dressed in expensive suits that looked ridiculous on a dusty mining colony. They reviewed Hyjin's reports, interviewed colonists, and examined the trade goods the Velthric had brought. Their conclusion was predictable. "This operation is unauthorized," the senior executive said. "Medical supplies are for colony personnel only. If the Velthric want medical care, they need to negotiate proper contracts through corporate channels." "They are at war," Tiemann said. "They do not have time for bureaucracy." "Not our problem?" "You are a company medic, not a charity." "Then I quit." The executive blinked. "Excuse me?" "I quit. I am no longer a company medic. I am just a person with medical training helping people who need it." Hyjin stood up. "I support him. This colony has benefited from Velthric trade goods and the potential for diplomatic relations. If corporate shuts this down, we lose all of that." Doyan nodded. "The security situation has improved too. Velthric tribes that were hostile before now bring gifts. We have intelligence about the region that we never had before. From a strategic standpoint, this is valuable." The executives looked at each other. Numbers and politics, Tiemann realized. They were calculating whether the diplomatic value outweighed the supply costs. "We will present this to the board," the senior executive said finally. "In the meantime, operations continue but with strict resource monitoring." It was not a victory, but it was not defeat either. Tiemann would take it. That night, Teeman sat outside the colony looking up at the alien stars. Soman found him there. "Tavi told me something interesting today," she said, sitting beside him. "There's a Velthric legend about humans. They did not know we existed until the mining ships arrived, but they have stories about healers from the stars who fix what is broken." "Coincidence," Teeman said. Maybe some truths are universal." Soman was quiet for a moment. "Tavi asked me why you do this. Why you help them when your own people question it." "What did you say?" "I said because you see suffering and your instinct is to stop it. Species does not matter." Teeman thought about the cub with the broken paw, about Thorol's tooth, about the hundreds of Velthric he had treated. "Is that strange? That I care more about the wound than who has it? To some species, yes. But maybe that is what makes humans different." Soman stood up. "The Velthric have a word now, one they created just for you. Tavi taught it to me. It translates roughly to one who sees all pain as equal." She left him there, thinking about that. A word in an alien language that meant something there were no words for in human speech. Recognition of something he had not realized he was doing. He had just wanted to help. Everything else had grown from that simple intention. In the darkness, near the fence, he could see Velthric shapes moving. More wounded arriving, trusting him with their pain. Teeman stood up and walked toward them, toward the work that would never really end. He would not have it any other way. The attack came at dawn. Alarm screamed through the colony, dragging Teeman from an exhausted sleep. He stumbled into the corridor, still pulling on his uniform, and nearly collided with Doyan. "What is happening?" "Korthan Collective. They hit a Velthric settlement 5 kilometers from here." Doyan was running toward the command center, and Teeman followed. "Early reports say heavy casualties." The command center was chaos. Haijin was coordinating with mining teams to secure the perimeter. Security officers checked weapons and prepared defensive positions. On the main display, drone footage showed smoke rising from the Velthric settlement. "Are they coming here?" someone asked. "Unknown, but we need to be ready." Teeman did not wait for orders. He went to the medical bay and started preparing. If there were casualties, they would need him. Soman arrived minutes later, followed by Minho and several other colonists who had been helping with medical work. "How bad is it?" Soman asked. "I do not know yet." They found out an hour later when Thorol appeared at the fence, carrying a wounded Velthric. Behind him, more came, dozens of them, supporting each other, dragging those who could not walk. The injuries were severe. Burns, shrapnel wounds, missing limbs. Some were bleeding so heavily they left trails on the ground. "Open the fence," Teeman said over his cum. "Open it now." "Teeman, we do not know if the Korthan are following them," Haijin warned. "I do not care. Open the fence." There was a pause, then the fence retracted. The wounded Velthric streamed through, filling the space outside the medical bay. Teeman moved among them, triaging, marking the most critical cases. Too many, far too many, but they worked anyway. Teeman operated on a Velthric with internal bleeding, while Soman stabilized another with severe burns. Minho, who had no medical training, held pressure on wounds and followed instructions. Other colonists brought supplies, water, clean bandages. They had done this enough times now to know the rhythm, hours blurred together. Teeman's hands moved automatically, muscle memory taking over when his brain was too tired to think. He lost count of how many patients he treated. 10, 20, more? It was afternoon when the Korthan arrived. Not attacking the colony, but brought by Velthric warriors. Prisoners, Teeman realized. 5 Korthan soldiers, hands bound, surrounded by angry Velthric. The Korthan were smaller than Velthric, but armored in technology, their bodies augmented with mechanical parts. 3 of them were injured, including one who looked like it might lose a leg. Thorol approached Teeman, vocalizing rapidly. Soman translated, her voice uncertain. "He is asking what to do with them. The Velthric want to. I think the word translates to finish them." "Execute them." Teeman looked at the Korthan prisoners. They stared back with eyes that showed no fear, only calculation. One of them said something in a language he did not know, but the tone was clear enough. Contempt. "Bring them to the medical bay," Teeman said. Soman stared at him. What? They are wounded. Bring them to the medical bay. Thorol made a sound that was definitely a question, maybe an objection. The other Velthrak vocalized, loudly, clearly upset. Timon, you cannot be serious, Haijin said over his cum. Those things just attacked them. And they are wounded, Timon replied. That is all that matters. He walked back to the medical bay, ignoring the protests behind him. Minutes later, Velthrak warriors brought the Korthan prisoners inside, throwing them roughly to the floor. The wounded Korthan hissed in pain. Timon knelt beside the one with the injured leg. The armor was shattered, the flesh beneath mangled. Without treatment, infection would set in, and the leg would have to be amputated. Maybe the soldier would die. He started cutting away the damaged armor. The Korthan soldier said something, its mechanical voice translator rendering the words in human language. Why do you help? We are your enemy. You are injured, Timon said, not looking up from his work. That is all I need to know. We would not help you. I know. He cleaned the wound, administered antibiotics, stabilized the leg. The soldier watched him work, its expression unreadable behind the helmet. When Timon moved to the next Korthan prisoner, the first one grabbed his arm. You are a fool, it said. Your kindness is weakness. Maybe, Timon agreed. But I am the fool who decides if you keep that leg. He treated all three wounded Korthan, ignoring the protests from Velthrak outside, ignoring Haijin's worried messages, ignoring his own exhaustion. When he finished, he sat down heavily on the floor, his hands shaking. Thorol entered the medical bay. The chieftain looked at the treated Korthan prisoners, then at Timon. It vocalized something long and complex. He does not understand, Soman translated. Why you heal the enemy? They kill his people. They show no mercy. Timon looked up at Thorol. I am a medic. I heal people. All people. That is what I do, Soman translated. Thorol was silent for a long time. Then it did something that shocked everyone. It bowed, not just a nod but a full bow, lowering itself to the ground in a gesture of profound respect. The other Velthrak saw this and went silent. One by one they began to bow as well. The Korthan prisoners watched this with what looked like confusion. The one Timon had treated first spoke again. They honor you. Why? I do not think it is honor, Timon said quietly. I think it is understanding. Over the next days something shifted. The corporate representatives, who had been planning to shut down the medical operation, suddenly found themselves caught in a political situation bigger than they expected. The Velthrak had witnessed something profound, a human treating their enemies with the same care as their friends. Word spread faster than before, but more importantly, the Korthan had witnessed it too. The prisoner with the injured leg, whose name translated roughly to Ven, requested to speak with Timon. They met in a holding area, Ven still restrained but no longer treated as hostile. In my culture, Ven said through its translator, the wounded are left to die or given quick death. Weakness is removed from the collective. When I was injured, I expected the same. That is not my culture, Timon replied. I see that now. Ven was quiet for a moment. Your people are strange, inefficient. You waste resources on those who cannot contribute. Is that what you think I did? Yes and no. Ven struggled with something, its mechanical parts whirring. I will live because of you. My leg will heal. I will return to my unit and possibly fight Velthrak again. Your action makes no tactical sense. It makes human sense. Explain. Timon thought about how to put it into words. We believe that all people have value. Not because of what they can do, but because they exist. A wounded person is still a person. An enemy is still a person. I see suffering and I stop it. That is all. That is weakness. Maybe, or maybe it is strength you do not understand. Ven was sent back to Korthan space a week later, fully healed. Timon did not know what would come of that. But 3 days after Ven left, something unexpected happened. A Korthan diplomatic vessel requested permission to approach the colony. The meeting that followed was tense. Korthan diplomats, Velthrak chieftains, including Thorol, human corporate representatives, and Haijin's administrative team. Timon was not invited, but they asked him to attend anyway. The Korthan delegation leader spoke through translators. We have been at war with the Velthric for 17 years. We considered them weak for showing injury, for asking for help. We believed our way was superior. Everyone waited. One of our soldiers returned with a different story. A human who healed without asking why. Who treated enemy wounded with the same care as allies. We investigated these claims and found them true. The Corthan paused. This action has caused significant debate in our collective. If humans do not see wounded enemies as weak, perhaps we have misunderstood weakness entirely. Thoro vocalized, Soman translating. The humans see all wounds as equal, all suffering as worth stopping. They are neither Velthric nor Corthan. They are other, yes, the Corthan agreed. And perhaps that outside perspective is what both our species need. It was not peace, not yet. But it was talking instead of shooting, which was a start. The colony transformed over the following months. More medical staff arrived from Earth, proper facilities were built. Teeman trained both Velthric and Corthan. In basic medical care, teaching them to help their own people. A human diplomat named Suji arrived to formalize what Teeman had started accidentally. She was good at her job, skilled at navigating the complex politics of interspecies relations. But she came to Teeman often for advice. You started something bigger than you know, she told him one day. I just treated a wounded cub, Teeman replied. And that single act of compassion has stopped a war, or at least paused it. Suji looked out at the expanded medical center, where humans, Velthric, and even a few Corthan worked together. They are calling it the Verith Accords. A new model for first contact based on medical cooperation instead of military positioning. Teeman felt uncomfortable with the attention. He had not wanted to be a diplomat or a peacemaker. He had just wanted to fix what was broken. The cub found him on his day off. It was not a cub anymore, nearly full-grown, but Teeman recognized it immediately. The limp was gone, the paw healed completely. It had been learning human language and approached him with careful pronunciation. I am Kavi, it said. You heal my paw. I learn medicine now. I want help like you help.